Vallabha Girivardhari Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana Jamunatira Vanachari Jamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari ISKCON Guru Vrinda Ki Srila Prabhupada Ki Kantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai Gaur Premanande. Reading from Srila Prabhupada Lilamrita. Built a house in which the whole world can live. This chapter is entitled In Every Town and Village. Prabhupada gave the analogy that when cooking rice, the cook need test only one grain to determine whether the whole pot of rice is done. Similarly, by talking with this one Russian youth, Prabhupada could tell that the Russian people were not satisfied in their so-called ideal land of Marxism. Just as Ivan was keenly receptive to Krishna consciousness, millions of other Russians would be also. Chanakya Pandit, the Vedic philosopher, says that one blooming flower can refresh a whole forest, and that a fire in a single tree can burn the whole forest. From the Marxist point of view, Ivan was the fire that would spread Krishna consciousness to others, first defeating the communist ideology. And from Prabhupada's point of view, he was the aromatic flower that would lend its fragrance to many others. Prabhupada's visit to Russia was no obscure interlude, but had become an occasion for planting the seed of Krishna consciousness in a destitute land. Srila Prabhupada had brought the movement of Lord Chaitanya to yet another country. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself had predicted that the Sankirtan movement would go to every town and village. Yet for hundreds of years that prediction had remained unfulfilled. Prabhupada, however, in the few years since his first trip to America in 1965, had again and again planted Lord Chaitanya's message in one unlikely place after another. And of all these places, this was perhaps the most unlikely. During a brief government-supervised visit to Moscow, he had planted the seed of Krishna consciousness within the Soviet Union. He was like the needle, and everyone and everything connected with him was like the thread that would follow. Professor Kotovsky had remarked that Prabhupada's stay in an old-fashioned hotel would not prove very interesting. But Prabhupada, unknown to Professor Kotovsky, was transcendental to Moscow or any other place in the material world. He had come to this place, and Krishna had sent a sincere soul to him to receive the gift of Krishna consciousness. This had happened not by devious espionage against the Soviet government, but by the presence of Krishna's pure devotee and his natural desire to satisfy Krishna by preaching. In response to Prabhupada's pure desires, Krishna had sent one boy, and from that one boy the desire would spread to others. Nothing, not even an iron curtain, could stop Krishna consciousness. The soul's natural function was to serve Krishna, and Krishna's natural will was to satisfy the pure desire of his devotees. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Shri Kodintai Mahaprasad ki jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Read from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 6, Chapter 11, entitled The Transcendental Qualities of Vritrasura. And we're starting from text 6 through 18, is that right? Okay, so it would take quite a while to go through the Sanskrit, so I'll go through the translations just. Shukadev Goswami said, Vritrasura, the angry and most powerful hero, terrified the demigods with his stout and strongly built body. When he roared with a resounding voice, nearly all living entities fainted. All the demigods heard Vritrasura's tumultuous roar, which resembled that of a lion. They fainted and fell to the ground as if struck by thunderbolts. The demigods closed their eyes in fear. Vritrasura, taking up his trident and making the earth tremble with his great strength, trampled the demigods beneath his feet on the battlefield the way a mad elephant tramples hollow bamboos in the forest. Seeing Vritrasura's disposition, Indra, the king of heaven, became intolerant and threw at him one of his great clubs, which are extremely difficult to counteract. However, as the club flew toward him, Vritrasura easily caught it with his left hand. O King Parikshit, the powerful Vritrasura, the enemy of King Indra, angrily struck the head of Indra's elephant with that club, making a tumultuous sound on the battlefield. For this heroic deed, the soldiers on both sides glorified him. Struck with the club by Vritrasura like a mountain struck by a thunderbolt, elephant Airavata, feeling great pain and spitting blood from his broken mouth, was pushed back 14 yards. In great distress, the elephant fell with Indra on its back. He saw Indra's carrier elephant thus fatigued and injured, and when he saw Indra morose because his carrier had been harmed in that way, the great soul Vritrasura, following religious principles, refrained from again striking Indra with the club. Taking this opportunity, Indra touched the elephant with his nectar-producing hand, thus relieving the animal's pain and curing its injuries. Then the elephant and Indra both stood silently. O king, when the great hero, Vritrasura, saw Indra, his enemy, the killer of his brother, standing before him with a thunderbolt in his hand, desiring to fight, Vritrasura remembered how Indra had cruelly killed his brother. Thinking of Indra's sinful activities, he became mad with lamentation and forgetfulness. Laughing sarcastically, he spoke as follows. Sri Vritrasura said, He who has killed a Brahmin, he who has killed his spiritual master, indeed, he who has killed my brother is now by good fortune stand before me face to face as my enemy. O most abominable one, when I pierce your stone-like heart with my trident, I shall be freed from my debt to my brother. Only for the sake of living in the heavenly planets, you killed my elder brother, a self-realized, sinless, qualified Brahmin, who had been appointed your chief priest. He was your spiritual master, but although you entrusted him with the performance of your sacrifice, you later mercilessly severed his heads from the body the way one butchers an animal. Indra, you are bereft of all shame, mercy, glory, and good fortune. Deprived of these good qualities by the directions of your fruitive activities, you are now condemned even by the Manitos, Rakshasas. Now I shall pierce your body with my trident, and after you die with great pain, even fire will not touch your body, only the vultures will eat your body. You're naturally cruel. If the other demigods, unaware of my prowess, following you by attacking me with raised weapons, I shall sever their heads with this sharp trident. With those heads, I shall perform a sacrifice to Bhairava and the other leaders of the ghosts along with their hordes. Text 18. Hato Hare Me Kulishena Vira. Hato Hare Me Kulishena Vira. Harta Pramatyaiva Shiro Yadiha Harta Pramatyaiva Shiro Yadiha Tatran Rino Bhuta Balim Vidhaya Tatran Rino Bhuta Balim Vidhaya Manashvinam Pada Raja Prapatsye Manashvinam Pada Raja Prapatsye Ato Hare me kulishena vira. Harta pramatyaiva shiro yadiha. Tatranrino bhutavalim vidaya. Manasvinam padaraja prapatsye. Ato Hare me kulishena vira. Harta pramatyaiva shiro yadiha. Tatranrino bhutavalim vidaya. Manasvinam padaraja prapatsye. Ato Hare me kulishena vira. Harta pramatyaiva shiro yadiha. Tatranrino bhutabalim vidaya. Manasvinam padaraja prapatsya. Ye. Please chant. Ato Hare me kulishena vira. Harta pramatyaiva shiro yadiha. Bhutabalim vidaya. Manasvinam padaraja prapatsye. Ato, otherwise, Hare, O King Indra, me, of me, Kulishena, by your thunderbolt, Vira, O great hero, Harta, you cut off, Amatya, by my army, Eva, certainly, Shira, head, Yadi, if, Iha, in this battle, Tatra, in that case, and Rina, relieved of all debts in this material world. Bhutabalim, a presentation for all living entities. Vidhaya, arranging. Manasvinam, of great sages like Narada Muni. Padaraja, the dust of the lotus feet. Prapatsye, I shall achieve. Translation. But if in this battle you cut off my head with your thunderbolt and kill my soldiers, O Indra, O great hero, I shall take great pleasure in offering my body to other living entities, such as jackals and vultures. I shall thus be relieved of my obligations to the reactions of my karma, and my fortune will be to receive the dust from the lotus feet of great devotees like Narada Muni. Please repeat. But if in this battle you cut off my head with your thunderbolt and kill my soldiers, O Indra, O great hero, I shall take great pleasure in offering my body to other living entities, such as jackals and vultures. I shall thus be relieved of my obligations to the reactions of my karma, and my fortune will be to receive the dust from the lotus feet of great devotees like Narada Muni. Om Aganantamandasya. By Srila Prabhupada, but didn't read that yet. I just read so much, I was got a little bit distracted. Sri Narottam Das Thakur sings, Chai Gosani Yar Mui Tar Das Tansabara Padarenu Mora Panchagras. I'm the servant of the 6 Goswamis, and the dust of their lotus feet provides my 5 kinds of food. The Vaishnava always desires the dust of the lotus feet of previous acharyas and Vaishnavas. Vritrasura was certain that he would be killed in the battle with Indra because this was the desire of Lord Vishnu. He was prepared for death because he knew that after his death he was destined to return home back to Godhead. This is a great destination, and it is achieved by the grace of a Vaishnava. Chadya Vaishnava Seva Nistara Payeche Keba. No one has ever gone back to Godhead without being favoured by a Vaishnava. In this verse, therefore, we find the words Manasvinam Pada Raja Prapatsye. I shall receive the dust of the lotus feet of great devotees. The word Manasvinam refers to great devotees who always think of Krishna. They are always peaceful, thinking of Krishna, and therefore they are called Dhira. The best example of such a devotee is Narada Muni. If one receives the dust of the lotus feet of a Mahanasvi, a great devotee, he certainly returns home back to Godhead. Om Gyanantamrandasya Gyananjana Slakaya Chakshun Litamina Tasmai Shigravē Namah Kam Karoti Vachalam Pangam Lagate Garim Yakipatam Bande Shigrim Ginitaranam Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Radhananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So the verse again, but if in this battle you cut off my head with your thunderbolt and kill my soldiers, O Indra, O great hero, I shall take great pleasure in offering my body to other living entities, such as jackals and vultures. I shall thus be relieved of my obligations to the reactions of my karma, and my fortune will be to receive the dust from the lotus feet of great devotees like Narada Muni. So we can see in previous verses, there is sometimes, like, I haven't seen one for a long time, but when we were young, the famous boxer of the day was Muhammad Ali, Cassius Clay. And so before they have a fight, then they're kind of goading each other and they're trying to incite each other and they insult each other. And so they're trying to kind of create some anger before the fight is there. But when the fight is on, then there's a referee there to ensure that there's some rules. So we see, although there's some kind of back and forth, insulting each other and teasing each other like that. When it came to the fight, then they would act according to the rules of the game. And even sometimes, though, there would be some subtle insult, such as when Indra hurled his club at Vritrasura, he caught it in his left hand. Now, the left hand is considered to be generally the weak hand. Unless you're left-handed, then your right hand would be the weak hand. So just as when Krishna lifted Govardhan Hill with the little finger of his left hand, so this is, for most people, if they're right-handed, that would be your weakest point. This is like the smallest finger here. Would you ever use that for? You probably wouldn't even pick your ear with it. It doesn't have, maybe a little bit for grip, but it's very weak. You not spend much time trying to strengthen it for any real purpose. So Krishna demonstrated that he didn't have to perform any mystic, he didn't have to perform any sacrifices or austerities to achieve mystic powers as being Yogeshwar. He's master of all mystic powers and he is always God, as Prabhupada said. He didn't have to become God. And no one else has actually demonstrated such a pastime, so this is unique. And so it was just a comparison with the weakness. So sometimes one warrior would kind of try to demoralize the other warrior by just taking something from them. And then he took the very same weapon which he caught in his left hand, he threw it at Airavata, the elephant of Indra, and or he smacked him on the head, right, and caused him severe probably knocked him back 14 yards. So I'm not sure what that is in Vedic measurements, but that's what it mentions anyway. So that's quite a thing. You think if you get hit with something and you go back 14 yards, then you're probably dead before you get to the other end of the 14 yards. And so there was a double insult then. The weapon which was thrown at him, then he used that to disable his carrier. And then he could have attacked again, but he observed the rules of the battlefield. Of course, we're not acquainted with all these rules. We're not exactly sure what is rules and what is teasing. But in any case, it's coming to the point here, because Vritrasura was asked by the Lord, then he had a certain surrendered disposition already. And yet he was playing this part of being angry with Indra for killing his brother. And so on account of that, then Indra was being accused of being cruel because he killed his brother without any mercy. And so he felt it was his duty to repay the compliment by killing Indra and any demigods who were there fighting on behalf of Indra. So interesting point here is that he's saying it seems like either way he feels he's going to win. If he kills Indra, then he's fulfilled his obligation by killing his enemy. And if he is killed by Indra, he's fulfilled his obligations to the reactions of his karma in this material world. So it's a win-win either way. He's seeing it like that. So devotees, this is our challenge, as we try to see what is the gain in any situation. Whether we win one way or whether we win another way. If we accept that everything is Krishna's arrangement, then we can take the lessons from these different situations which we find come upon us in life. So he's actually talking about being relieved of his obligations to the actions of karma, and his fortune will be to receive the blessings, the dust of the lotus feet of great devotees like Narada Muni. So it reminds me of when Mother Ranjanini was present here. She was a disciple of Srila Prabhupada. In 1992, she was diagnosed with a brain tumor, and they gave her 3 months to live. She lived for 2 years. She passed away in December 28th, 1994. And throughout that time, she avoided taking painkillers. She went through an operation and one bout of chemotherapy. And when she went back to the hospital and they said, "Oh, you need to get some more chemo," she said, "No, I'd rather die." She said, "That's worse than dying." And then she had determined that whatever is my reaction, I don't want to take painkillers, I just want to suffer them a lot and go back to Godhead. And so the devotees who were present in those days and witnessed the account of that person humbly accepting their situation and willingly accepting it with the intention that and praying with the intention that everything can be burnt up so that I can get out of this material world once and for all. And those who were there had no doubt that's what happened. So here we're seeing similar mentality, accepting this is my reaction, burning off my reaction so that I can be purified and become more dear to Krishna and become closer to Krishna. So this is how we have to try to see things as devotees if we're aspiring to be a devotee. And the example of Narada Muni is given here because he's such a great devotee. So it's mentioned, if one takes the dust of the lotus feet of such a devotee, or anyone in that line, then certainly he returns home back to Godhead. So would anyone like to say, what does that mean by taking the dust of the lotus feet? Does it mean just like physically, when their shoes are outside the temple, you just go and scoop up some dust and put it on your head? Is it just that, or is there anything else to that? Includes that. It doesn't exclude it, it's true. It's true, and it's also symbolic. Because in the Vedic culture, it's understood that the feet are the lowest part. They're always touching the ground, so they're dirty. And the head is the highest part, so when someone puts their highest part to someone else's lowest part, it means that they're accepting them with faith as someone to take shelter in. Of course, some people, they see it as a means of just dumping. If you know what I mean by dumping. Dumping means basically, oh, here's a sadhu, let me dump my karma on their feet. So this, although we do take the dust of the lotus feet of the devotees on our head, then we don't want to cause them the difficulty of just dumping on them and then carrying on with their nonsense. You know, the real thing is to take not just the physical dust from their feet, but the dust which comes out of their mouth. So this is mentioned here also. Ichai Gosani Yar Muitayar Taradas Tansabara Pada Renu Mora Panchagras. I am the seventh of the six Goswamis, and the dust of the lotus feet provide my 5 kinds of food. So there's 5 kinds of food. Can anyone name one of them? Salty. Yeah, it's 5. Right. Salty, sweet, sour, pungent, and I think that's the same one. Bitter. So it's considered, to have a full satisfaction of the palate, and for a balance of the doshas in the body, according to Ayurveda, then we have to have a certain amount of all these foodstuffs, unless we have some imbalance and there's some other kind of prescription has been given to avoid certain things. So if one has all of these in a meal, then one is considered to be satisfied. And certain things, there's a science to eating. Like you eat one thing before you eat the other, and it highlights the taste, enhances. So similarly, here it's being said that serving the lotus feet of the pure devotees, it satisfies us in the same way that having a complete meal with all rasas, all tastes there, satisfies us. So whatever we think we may achieve in the material world, we will achieve more than that. Basically, the external thing we're trying to achieve is only a means to try to find some kind of satisfaction. But if we find satisfaction by serving the lotus feet of the pure devotees, then we don't have any need to look elsewhere. And there's so many examples of people who have been in much more materially entangled situations than ourselves, either by being materially impoverished, materially affluent, or materially suffering. So there's so many examples of people who are worse off than us, and they still attain the shelter of the Lord. So this is encouraging to us. And we might think, oh, well, they're great devotees anyway. It was probably just Leela. But that's not necessarily the case. They do go through that. I remember Bhakti Bhava Maharaj giving a class once, and he said that when great souls like Bhaktivinoda Thakur talk about feeling lower than the straw on the street, they're not just saying that as lip service, they actually feel like that. But they're not depressed. It's not like low self-esteem. They're not depressed about their situation. It's not like, oh, I'm low on the street, so why bother? It's not like that. It's inspirational. It's a springboard for their enthusiasm to serve the Lord, please the Lord. What is His desire? Let me fulfill that desire. So in this way, they actually don't take credit because they're humble. They see everything is in the Lord's mercy. So if we can come to that platform, then we can become satisfied. If we're ambitious, being ambitious in the sense of doing something big for Krishna is good, but if we're simply ambitious to feed our false ego, then that never ends with satisfaction. So it says here, Srila Prabhupada says here that Vritrasura was already prepared for death because he knew after the death he'd return back to Godhead. So he wasn't concerned either way. He knew where he was going. So this is a great lesson for us also, to be detached from the result. The result may be this, the result may be that, but let me try to act for the Lord's pleasure. And whatever that result is, that's in Krishna's hands, but let me just try to do my best to endeavour without any ill motivation. And for pleasure of Guru and Krishna. And if we do that, we get their blessings, and this is how we get access to the spiritual world. It's mentioned here. Let's see if I can find it. No one has ever gone back to Godhead without being favoured by a Vaishnava. So there's so many instances in the Shastra, and so many instances historically with exchanges between devotees. For example, there's that time when there was a so-called great Ram Bhakta who was always chanting Ram, 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 and he'd managed to kind of accumulate such great importance and fame all over the country, and he had a big following, etc. And then he came to Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur's ashram, and he wanted to meet with Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, so the servant petitioned Maharaj to meet with him. He says, "Oh, there's this great Ram Bhakta. You know, he's well known everywhere. He just chants Ram, Ram, Ram." Even one time, apparently he got his leg run over by a train. I don't know if he's lost his leg. I don't remember the full details, and he just chanted Ram, 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 Ram. So of course everyone's thinking this is such a great person, a great devotee. And but Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Maharaj, he kept to the philosophy. First question he asked is, ask him one question: is he devotee of Ram directly or indirectly? So indirectly means not directly, of course, but by Guru Parampara, etc. So we went and asked him, are you directly or indirectly a devotee of Lord Ram? He says, oh, directly. And Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati said, okay, I don't want to see him. I can't remember the exact exchange at that point, but he was demonstrating that no matter how great someone appears to be a devotee, if they're not directly, if they're not connected with Parampara, and they're just directly trying to connect with Krishna, then that is not the way forward. And as Prabhupada says here in purport, that no one has ever gone back to Godhead without the mercy of a Vaishnava. So it leads us to this verse which we quote very often. Guru Krishna Prasadi Pai Bhakti Lata Bij. So by the mercy of the Lord's devotee, then we get the mercy of the Lord. And the mercy of the Lord is to get the association of the Lord's devotee. It was interesting to see in a few verses back, text 12, that Vritrasura, following religious principles, even though he could have finished Indra off because he considered him an enemy, then he refrained from striking again when he was down. You don't strike an enemy when they're down. That's considered to be irreligious. So, because Indra took the opportunity and touched the elephant with his nectar-producing hand and relieved the animal's pain and cured its injuries. So this is not some ordinary battle, like when the soldier's horse or elephant is down, then that's it, it's down. So sometimes we wonder, how can these battles go on for years? Like Muchukunda, he was such a great warrior that he was invited to the heavenly planets to fight on behalf of the demigods, and he fought for like so many celestial years, and then he was given he was granted to to be able to sleep for like so many thousands of years afterwards in a cave. And we know the rest of the story, that he was woken up by Kalyavana. Kalyavana was such a pest. Was it 17 times he was defeated, but he wouldn't give up? And then, or was it the 17th time? Then finally, Krishna, 17 times he attacked, was it Hastinapur? No, as far as I know, it was Kalyavana who actually, can't remember the details, but Krishna is known as Ranchor, wasn't it? One who ran from the battlefield. So Krishna, it was Kalyavana who chased after him, and they were thinking Krishna's a coward, but Krishna had an intention because he's omniscient, he knows everything, everywhere. So he led this Kalyavana to the cave where Muchukunda was sleeping. He was granted the benediction, which was that if he was woken up untimely, then he could burn to ashes anyone he's seen. Just like sometimes in the morning, somebody wakes us up and we're not too happy to receive it, and we might be a bit grumpy. We might try to burn someone to ashes with our stare because we didn't want to get up so early. We feel like, oh, this can't be true. It feels like I just closed my eyes. Or sometimes people are grumpy in the morning, but this Muchukunda was particularly cross with Kalyavana for wakening him up. And when he's seen him, he immediately burned him to ashes. And Krishna knew this is a benediction, so he led Kalyavana there. If I remember rightly, Krishna kicked him, dodged out the way, and then he burned him. And then Muchukunda got out of the cave, and he'd been sleeping for a long time. He could determine that by the size of everybody, the size of the trees, etc., it was Kali Yuga. And he thought, I'm not going to hang around. He went to the Himalayas, performed austerities, went back to Godhead. So many lessons in all these different pastimes. Like that one there. He's seen it was Kali Yuga and thought, this is an inauspicious age, let me get out of here. And Kali Yuga is actually considered to be the most inauspicious age because even within a day, one can accumulate such ugra karma. It can keep you going for many lifetimes. See, in the course of someone's normal day, they don't consider what they're involved in. They don't know there's a reaction for what they're doing. On the other hand, Kali Yuga is considered to be the best of all ages because simply by chanting the Hare Krishna mantra, Harinam, 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 Eva Kevalam, Kalo, Nischeva, 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 Katiranyata, one can be transferred to the spiritual world. And in this age, people are short-lived. So that may be, in one sense, a disqualification or a disadvantage. But to a devotee, if he's short-lived, that means I only have to chant for this amount of years and then I can go back. Rather than if you're around for like thousands of years, there's more opportunity to get entangled in the material world. So in this way, we can take advantage of a difficult situation and try to use it to our spiritual benefit. So I'll just stop there if anyone's got any questions or comments.
Shiv Ramanuj refers to, there's a question, are there any examples of ISKCON devotees achieving perfection in Srila Prabhupada's absence? A temple president's wife revealed her spiritual identity as a gopi in Nandagram who packed Krishna's lunch. Anyone who doubts that by following Srila Prabhupada we will become lovers of Krishna should be kept at a far distance. And then the question was, we can't directly become a devotee of Krishna. But is that the same for the Guru also, that we can't directly become a devotee of the Guru, we have to become a devotee of the Guru?
Well, we can be both. If the spiritual master gives you a direct instruction and you're directly following that, you're a direct connection. But we shouldn't also think, well, I'll just listen to my Guru, but don't listen to any of my God brothers or God sisters. Sometimes that happens. And that's not necessarily going to be pleasing to the spiritual master, because if they're giving the same instructions of the spiritual master, then that's just relevant. But sometimes people are like that, where the vapu is very important to them. Yeah, so the parampara is there. And I remember, I think it was Prahlada Maharaj giving a class at the manor one time ago, many years ago. And he was saying that being Dasa and Udas, 1,000 times removed doesn't mean to say that you're less or you're worse off than the Das who's above you. He says actually it's better because you're getting the nectar coming down from so many devotees. He says this is a safe position to be in. If we think I'm only Das or Das and Udas, of course, we have to draw the line somewhere and get on with something practical. We can't just all day sit there going, I'm Das and Udas and Udas and Udas and Udas and Udas and Das. It's all about the mood of service rather than being of the mood of the doer, being the controller. And I guess this is also, in practice, it means, like Prabhupada said, the devotee thinks everyone else is a devotee, but I am not a devotee. But at the same time, they're thinking, but still I'm fortunate to have the association of devotees because then there's a chance. So learning to appreciate other devotees, then that's good cultivation of humility. And it means even if we have to, even if there are faults there, then still the one good thing is that devotees are chanting Hare Krishna, they're taking prasadam, they've given up following some other pursuit in the material world. There's not many devotees in the world, so we have to learn to try to appreciate each other and encourage each other in our service. And this way, by appreciating others, when we're cultivating the good in ourselves. And even if we are aware of so many faults, we have to actually put into practice that the reason devotees are here, because they're here of their own free will. They're dedicating their life to Krishna consciousness. So every devotee is valuable. And everyone has their reasons for committing to Krishna. They have their own path which brought them to Krishna. It wasn't easy. They all gave up something to come to Krishna. So we have to acknowledge that. And by acknowledging that and trying to appreciate the good in others, then the good will manifest in ourselves too. Krishna is pleased by that. Any questions or comments? Ashish.
It's an online comment from Laura. She's referring to Mother Ratna Ranjani when you were describing about her. She says, she's an amazing soul. I love hearing about her, such an inspiration.
Yes, we can pray to these devotees that and get their blessings. They're already back to Godhead with the Lord. We can pray to any of the Lord's devotees or any of the Lord's incarnations. And pray for that we can also have the same kind of a spirit that they had. To me personally, she imbibed the aspect of, as mentioned in Nectar of Devotion, that a pure devotee never likes to remain idle. So she was always engaged. She never missed her rounds, always chanting her Gayatris. She was very regular, and she was always engaged in devotional service. You always seen her doing something or other. And when she got sick, and when she passed away, it took 5 devotees to cover her service. So that's a tough act to follow. And by that, she attained perfection. There's different ways you can attain perfection, and it's not like one is better than the other. It's not mentioned like that. The best way is what's going to get you back to Godhead. And for her, that's how she dedicated her life. Her main meditation was to serve the Sankirtan devotees. In those days, we'd a very dedicated Sankirtan force, and those devotees who remained back at the temple, their connection with the preaching in that respect was to serve the Sankirtan mission by always minimizing the kind of day-to-day things that Sankirtan devotees would have to get involved in. So, for example, one devotee would do the laundry of everybody, and someone would make sure everything was clean, etc. And therefore, the devotees would just focus on that one activity. It was very good for that time, and because it was a very strong, pioneering, like forefront, just like the tip of the spear. It's very sharp, so there's a great focus on that one activity. But we're a pioneering movement, and it's not that we only do that activity forevermore. Because of that activity, then people become interested, so we have to create facilities to serve the people who become interested, and then it broadens the Sankirtan movement. But at the same time, we have to continue with these primary activities of the Krishna conscious movement, because there are so many devotees. Lord Chaitanya said there's devotees in every town and village, and having done this every town and village program for years, we actually witnessed that. We witnessed people in the middle of nowhere in a little village with not even 100 people in it, and there's somebody in there who wanted, when we met them, they just wanted all of Prabhupada's books that we had with us. So we actually done this. When I was in Mayapur a few years ago, one devotee was giving a class, and he said that the souls, the spirit souls in Kali Yuga are rotting, sitting in their house thinking, when's Lord Chaitanya going to come and save me? So Lord Chaitanya is going to come and save them by the mercy of the devotees, which means it may be difficult for us, but we undertake that difficulty for the pleasure of Lord Chaitanya, for the pleasure of Guru, because by saving them, we're saving ourselves also. By giving them the mercy, even though it's difficult, we're getting the mercy. So this is, and then when they become interested, we have to have some kind of infrastructure there so that people can be cultivated, and that they can also become part of Lord Chaitanya's Sankirtan army. So it's mentioned in the Shastra the different devotees who attain perfection by the different means, like Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnusmanam, Padasevanam, Archanam, Vandanam, Sakyamat, Nivedanam, etc. So there's different devotees are examples. It's not that they're the only examples. It's not 9 people get liberated and then that's it. But they're prime examples. And if we look into their lifestyle, and we can see their example, their dedication, their devotion, and we can pray to them that we can get their blessings so that we can also be a good devotee. So when we say, for example, you pray to a certain devotee, then it's not, sometimes they say Vaishnavanam Yatha Shambhu, so Lord Shiva is considered the topmost devotee. So if a devotee prays to Lord Shiva, generally we don't, because we don't feel the need to, we've got our spiritual master. But if a devotee honors or praises or prays to Lord Shiva, they're not praying because he's the Supreme Person, they're praying for the mercy that they can also be a great devotee. He's the topmost devotee. Please bless me that I can also become a strong devotee. But generally, devotees of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, even if a demigod is a great devotee, generally they just pray to Guru and Krishna and acharyas, principal acharyas, and that keeps it quite simple. Is that okay? Any other questions or comments? Okay, Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Iskon Guru ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, Tagore Premanande.
Grace Prabhupada Prana Prabhu ki Jai.